All right, so welcome back. So now our next lecture here that we're covering as we're going through our journey of Ottoman history and Ottoman sultans is what happens with the period after the Battle of Ankara. So the last video I was doing for you guys for my courses, of course, was the story of Bayezid the First and Tamerlane and how you had the Battle of Ankara, and then he was captured and then going to die in captivity and who's in charge of the Ottoman Empire. And so you have this period of time called the Interregnum period. I've heard it pronounced a couple different ways, between about 1402 and 1413. And during that time, there's really no official Ottoman leader, right? There's no Ottoman Sultan officially. 1413, that changes, and so I'm going to talk about who emerges after this short little hiatus of this in-between period of rulers, and then what happens under a couple of key sultans that follow from 1413 to 1451. So let's talk about that. So what happens is the key person after Bayezid is gone. He had four sons. He had a man named Mehmed the First, and again sometimes you'll see it spelled with a T at the end. Sometimes it's spelled with a D at the end. And he had three other brothers, Musa, Isa, and Suleiman, and you can see all their words there, the key words there. And essentially what happens, before we talk about this conflict, you see this term with Venice and the conflict he's going to have with them and all that, what first of all happens, he has to deal with his brothers. And this is this kind of whole brother killing brother, and you really see this during the time of Mehmed the First. So first of all, what happens is Mehmed kills his brother Isa. Then, just to follow along on this, he makes a deal with his other brother Musa to strangle Suleiman. So Suleiman is strangled to death. And then Mehmed turns against Musa. There's a big battle there's a battle, and Musa is killed in battle. And so it's just constantly brother versus brother, but eventually at the end of the day, Mehmed emerges in 1413 to 1420. He gets the Ottoman period out of this interregnum period, and he emerges to kind of reestablish this sultanate control. In terms of what he does, really there's only one major thing I want to talk about is he starts to kind of start this conflict with Venice. And so if we look at our map over here, of course, up here in Italy, you have Venice. And at the time, I think it is important to remember, there isn't a united Italy. Italy is divided into a whole bunch of kingdoms, kingdoms. There's like Venice and Florence and Naples and the Papal States. There isn't one united kingdom of Italy. And so there's some conflicts there between the two. And, at the end of the day, he doesn't gain a lot of land or a lot of changes, but he is building up the Ottoman Navy. And that's going to become more significant as we move on to his son. So his son is Murad II. You can see 1421 to 1451. Just like his father, you had to deal with the other siblings. He was a little bit nicer. He didn't kill him. He just blinded two of them, and then another one apparently just, ran away. He was only 17 years old when Murat II comes in, and again, you might see it spelled M-U-R-A-T as opposed to the D at the end. You do got to keep the Roman numerals straight, right? You don't want to mix up Murat I with Murat II, so just be careful on that as you're taking any notes for your quizzes or notes or anything. And so Murat II, his big thing, of course, is going to re-engage Venice in more conflicts. And eventually, what this will lead to is a peace or a treaty called the Peace of Lepesky in 1430. And what this is an agreement between Venice and the Ottoman Empire that's now starting to grow. And there's a few points that I want you to know about it. So over here, let me kind of highlight it for you a little bit. You have right over here is the Aegean Sea. I'm kind of highlighting it in yellow for you if you're not familiar with it because it's not on the map there. And there are a lot of ports in the Aegean Sea that Venice had influence over, and part of the agreement was that the Ottomans would get influence over some of those ports. Another point in this agreement that they made between Venice and the Ottomans is that Venice would have to pay a tribute to the Ottomans, pay them money to kind of leave them alone. And then there were also agreements that, the people in Venice can trade through the Black Sea, you could see up here, and of course the Aegean Sea. And so what we see is very quickly Murad II, I think his biggest claim to fame, so to speak, is really elevating the Ottoman Navy even further. And so what we're now seeing is you're kind of going through the beginning of Ottoman history, where it just started, if you remember, just on this little piece of real estate right over here in Bursa area, right around there. And then they expanded, Nicaea, Thrace we talked about. They're getting bigger and larger. And by the time we get to 1451, they've really got a pretty good foothold around the Byzantine Empire. They don't control Constantinople yet. Even Murad II was not able to conquer Constantinople. The other thing about Murad II is he is going to be pretty big on education. He's going to establish a lot of schools and education there. And he's also going to be important because of his son. And his son is going to bring into Ottoman history what we oftentimes call the golden age of Ottoman history. And up to this point, as much as the Ottomans have expanded, as much as they've grown, the one thing they've never really been able to do is conquer Constantinople. And it was said if any Ottoman sultan can do that, they would be kind of legendary. And so, of course, that's going to be our next step to see what happens after Murad II dies, when he's replaced by his son, who's going to usher in this golden age. But those are the kind of things you want to know about this little interregnum period and the rise of those couple sultans up to Murad II. All right, hope all that's clear. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you, everyone.